why do I do so much stuff that involves mystery? And I started trying to figure it out. And I started thinking about, well, why do I do any of what I do? And I started thinking about Tannen's Mystery Magic Box. Now, I bought this decades ago, and I'm not kidding. If you look at this, you'll see it's never been opened. But I've had this forever. Now, I was looking at this, it was in my office, and as it always is, on the shelf, and I was thinking, why have I not opened this?
In 2008, J.J. Abrams gave a TED Talk called The Mystery Box, and he brought up some interesting ideas about the nature of storytelling. At the time, Abrams was most famous for creating one of the most groundbreaking TV shows of the era, Lost. Lost was famous for its mystery. Its characters spent week after week digging deeper into the complicated web of the unknown on the island where they were stranded. Lost had hooked millions of people. It was only natural that many people would be curious about the writing philosophies of its creator. And in this talk, Abrams was happy to share.
But when I started to think that maybe there are times when mystery is more important than knowledge. Stories, you think, well, what are stories but mystery boxes? There's a fundamental question. In TV, the first act is called the teaser. It's literally the teaser. It's the big question. So you're drawn into it. Then, of course, there's another question, and it goes on and on. That it represents infinite possibility. It represents hope. It represents potential. And what I love about this box, and what I realized I sort of do in whatever it is that I do, is I find myself drawn to infinite possibility and that sense of potential. And I realize that mystery is the catalyst for imagination. You know, you go to the theater, you're just so excited to see anything. The moment the lights go down is often the best part. You know, and you're full of that amazing, that feeling of excited anticipation. And often the movie is like there and it's going, and then something happens, you go, oh, and then something else, you're like,
The question is more interesting than the answer. The journey is more satisfying than the destination. It's mystery, wonder of the unknown, that gets an audience to care. That is J.J. Abrams' guiding storytelling principle. But he didn't invent these ideas out of thin air, and he isn't the only one who uses them. What he hit on in this TED Talk is something that had been building in American TV for a while, caught fire a decade ago, and is going stronger than ever today. If you spend any time with fandom culture on the internet, you know what I'm talking about. There's a certain type of fictional media that exists to get your brain working. TV shows, books, movies, or video games that present you with a narrative full of holes, missing pieces, and ask you to try and fill in the gaps yourself. They make people flock to social media, fan message boards, and YouTube, where they share fan theory after fan theory. As these stories unfold, they give its audience information in tiny scraps, slowly uncovering the mysteries. But every question answered just raises another question. It exists most commonly in TV shows, where incremental installments can reveal things piece by piece, leaving the audience to pick apart the information they have in between waiting for the next episode. You know the type. Lost, Westworld, and to a certain extent the most recent Star Wars trilogy. They keep the audience coming back over and over, desperately trying to figure out just what is going on. This style of storytelling is named after the Abrams talk, the Mystery Box story. But if I got to pick the name, I'd call it the corkboard story, because whenever somebody tries to explain one, they end up looking like this.
There is no Pepe Sylvia. The man does not exist, okay? So I decided, buddy, I gotta dig a little deeper. There's no Pepe Sylvia, you gotta be kidding me! I got boxes full of Pepe!
J.J. Abrams coined the term, and his works and his TED Talk have proved very influential. But the thing is, JJ's ideas on mystery boxes don't necessarily always work all that well. The ending of Lost was divisive, to say the least. Its final episode left a ton of questions unanswered, and it drove a lot of people crazy. More recently, after the mixed responses to his work on the newest Star Wars and Star Trek movies, he and his TED Talk have kind of become a punching bag for the internet. These days, the mystery box is pretty controversial. Some people love stories like this, myself included. It can be really cool to watch a TV show like a detective, keeping track of all the plot points and making guesses about the pieces that you're missing. Or if you're too lazy to do that, find someone on the internet to do it for you. But there are plenty of people who are sick of seeing this kind of thing everywhere. Plus, between Lost and Star Wars Episode 9, Abrams' mystery boxes have been responsible for some of the biggest letdowns in pop culture history. This video will take a look at exactly what a mystery box story is, and how it works. and it will come up with a guide to writing one, hopefully learning from where other mystery boxes have gone wrong. First, where did the mystery box come from? Well, way back in the ancient year of 1989, the TV landscape was very different than it is today. The sitcom and the police procedural reigned supreme. Cheers was the most popular show on the air. What do these genres have in common? Every episode stood on its own. These shows were airing on live TV at specific times. If you missed an episode, or started watching a couple seasons in, it wasn't exactly easy to catch up later. You were pretty much at the mercy of reruns. So, TV studios would make episodes that could be watched in any order. It was easy watching, no commitment required. Enter Twin Peaks. This show focused on the life of a small town, and how it's upended by the murder of a teenage girl named Laura Palmer. Right away, it was obvious that this was something different. For one, the Laura Palmer case stretched over multiple seasons. Things were never wrapped up at the end of an episode. Each installment built on the last one. If you missed an episode, you'd be completely lost. And if you didn't miss any episodes, you might still be confused, because the show was full of moments of the supernatural and the metaphysical that made you go, huh?
I am the arm. And I sound like this.
The mystery of Laura Palmer's murder soon spiraled into a complicated web that seemed incomprehensible to most viewers. Now, it's not that Twin Peaks was the first serialized mystery. All of these story elements had appeared earlier in some form or another, but it was the degree to which the show pushed its audience that made it stand out. Twin Peaks is maybe the most confusing and mysterious shows ever made. To this day, people are still theorizing and debating over what the heck this show was even about, and the series creators have been infamously unwilling to explain any of it.
We'll elaborate on that.
No, I won't.
There was nothing like it anywhere on TV at the time. But unfortunately, it seems that audiences weren't ready for this kind of thing, and Twin Peaks was cancelled before its time. Honestly, Twin Peaks deserves its own video, but let's move on for now. Over the next decade or two, the TV landscape changed. It became a lot easier to watch through an entire TV series straight through. First with VHS and DVD releases, then with DVR recording, and finally streaming services that had entire shows all in one place online. Self-contained episodes became less common as studios attempted bigger, longer, more complicated storytelling across multiple seasons. They were able to ask more commitment and more engagement from their viewers, now that missing episodes was a thing of the past. That's when we get to J.J. Abrams' Lost and his mystery box. Lost is about the survivors of a plane crash who are stuck on an island full of the supernatural. The show unraveled its mysteries over 6 seasons, and had people watching with a pen and paper to note down any detail that might be an important clue. Where Twin Peaks walked, Lost ran, keeping its audience curious and asking questions all the way through, until the ending sent half of its fanbase into an online rage. Since then, tons of other shows have done the same thing, to varying degrees of success. As streaming and binge-watching became more common, the popularity of mystery boxes exploded. It's gotten to the point where most serialized stories have at least some mystery box elements within them. J.J. Abrams doesn't have a monopoly on mystery box stories, but he either made or influenced most of its best-known examples. Because of that, his ideas, good and bad, are common even in mystery box stories that he didn't make. Since Lost, though, many other stories have avoided his mistakes. Gravity Falls, Series of Unfortunate Events, Dark, Stranger Things, and Westworld are just a few of the best from this decade. And they've been helped by a bigger, better internet that helps people watch more content and talk with other people about what they watched. So that's what a mystery box story is in broad terms. But what I want to do is pin down a more concrete definition. The Abrams talk is a good starting point, but if you watch it all the way through, you'll find that it's pretty vague. It's obvious that even though this is where the term came from, Abrams isn't using it in the same way that screenwriters do today. To him, mystery box isn't a mode of storytelling. It's something that applies to all stories.
Goes on and on and on. I mean, look at like Star Wars. You got the droids. They meet the mysterious woman. Who's that? We don't know. Mystery box, you know. Then you meet Luke Skywalker. He gets the droid. You see the holographic image. You learn, oh, it's a message. You know, she wants to, find Obi-Wan Kenobi. He's her only hope. But who the hell's Obi-Wan Kenobi? Mystery box.
It's just a general writing philosophy. The mystery box story, as I think of it, and as most other people think of it, is something more specific. It's arguably its own genre. The aim of this video essay is to lay out a detailed definition of a mystery box story, and figure out what makes a good mystery box story. I've come up with some parameters to answer those questions. Here are 10 things that every good mystery box story should do. 1. Start with one huge, obvious mystery. In Twin Peaks, it was who killed Laura Palmer. In Gravity Falls, it was who wrote the journal. In Stranger Things, it is where is Will Byers. In Lost, it was...
What the hell's that island? It's usually followed by, no, seriously, what the hell's that island?
Asking a question up front sets the tone. It lets the audience know what they're in for. And it provides a jumping off point for the rest of the mysteries. That's mysteries plural, because 2. Have more than one mystery. The mystery box story is different from a standard whodunit story, which asks one question and then answers it. In a mystery box story, the exploration of the first question only raises more questions, until it becomes a tangled web. 3. The mysteries are interconnected. A good mystery box story will introduce, say, a missing little boy, a shadowy monster, a shady government organization, and a telekinetic little girl, and then slowly explain how they are all related to each other, even if they seem separate at first. 4. Make the mysteries known to the audience. A lot of people like to lump in The Good Place with all these shows. I disagree. The Good Place is famous for its multiple twist reveals. But the key difference here is that its reveals are unexpected. It reveals answers to questions you never knew you had, which makes for great storytelling in general. Who doesn't love a Shyamalan twist? But that's not how mystery boxes work. Audience analysis is a critical part of the mystery box experience. And a true mystery box has to have obvious mysterious things for an audience to dissect. You can't wonder about the answer if you don't know there's a question. 5. Be long. Obviously, length is relative, and there's some great mystery box stories that are pretty tiny. But most of the best mystery boxes unravel their mysteries over time. The slow burn is what gets people invested. This is why the mystery box format is so common in TV, where a show has multiple seasons to stretch out its reveals. Book series can also do this very well. Length really lets a story expand and pace out its reveals. Speaking of which, 6. Pace your reveals. This is a very common mistake for a lot of mystery box stories. So many of them blow through their material too early, leaving barely any mystery to keep people hooked to the end. Or they wait too long, and the ending rushes to tie up loose ends, becoming a jumbled mess. The best mystery boxes give their audience a few crumbs of info at a time, with occasional huge reveals when the plot calls for it. This is another reason why TV and book series are the best medium for this. The episodic structure allows for the story to move forward step by step, controlling the flow of information. 7. Be clear whether things are literal or metaphorical. As the mystery box starts to unravel, the audience will get a better idea of the story world at large. When that happens, some of the things in the story might make less sense, not more. That is, less sense if you take them literally. Once the story gets reasonably far along, audiences might have to consider if the things they're seeing are actually happening. Because keep in mind, these are works of fiction, works of art, and the relationship between art and logic has always been tenuous at best. When Stan Pines visits his secret underground bunker in Gravity Falls, you can be confident that it's a real physical place, since you see how to get to it, and other characters visit it later. That's not the case for some of the locations in Twin Peaks. When you try to fit them into the parameters of the story world, you come up short. Things like this defy a literal explanation. This is because some mystery box stories are built around large metaphors, meant to represent an idea. Metaphorical mystery boxes can be really frustrating for some audience members who aren't expecting it going in. They want their answers to be concrete. Obviously, you can't please everyone, but mystery box writers should make it clear which angle they're going for, so they don't mislead anybody. Here's a general guide for telling the difference. Do the main characters interact with it directly? Do they talk about it with each other in concrete terms? It's literal. Does it seem totally divorced from the main plot? So far out of left field that you have a hard time putting it into words? Metaphor. A story can have both, but as long as everyone can ground themselves by knowing which is which, the story will be a lot more fun. This next one is going to sound counterintuitive, but 8. The ending should wrap up most things, but it doesn't have to wrap up everything. Once a mystery box gets close to the end, the audience is dying for answers. And they do deserve answers, considering how much they've invested. The ending should probably wrap up most things. When a story doesn't, like Lost, it can be infuriating. But there's something to be said for leaving a few details up to interpretation. For one, sometimes when you lay out all the information, it can actually seem kind of silly. When the audience has been building up hype for such a long time, any simple, straightforward answer will feel anticlimactic. A great way to get around this is to lay out all the pieces, but let the audience fit everything together, so they're pretty sure they have most of it figured out. Giving explicit, clear answers to every little thing will put an end to the magic, the excitement of the unanswered questions. As David Lynch put it, complete and total closure is an excuse for the audience to forget about it once it's over. If a mystery box story leaves some questions open, it can ensure that the audience will stay engaged long after it ends. As long as all the critical stuff gets explained. I save the two most important things for last. If a mystery box writer needs to keep anything in mind, it's these. 9. The answers to the mysteries have to be set up in advance. This is the biggest problem by far with the Abrams model, and it's the thing that everyone points to when criticizing the mystery box as a concept. Let's return to the Abrams TED Talk. There are a lot of flaws with his take on the mystery box. Most of them can be summarized with this clip here.
And I started thinking, why haven't I opened it? And I realized that I haven't opened it because it represents something important to me. The withholding of information, doing that intentionally, is much more engaging. But when I started to think that maybe there are times when mystery is more important than knowledge.
So he's saying that questions drive a story, and that questions are more interesting than their answers. That's not untrue, but he takes it a step further, implying that the answers are irrelevant. I'm not gonna mince words here, that's stupid. It's why so many people hated the Lost and Star Wars finales. So many J.J. Abrams projects have really exciting, engaging beginnings, but then the endings fall flat. It's because when he writes the beginning, he doesn't have the ending figured out. He just makes up a good beginning hook and hopes for the best.
But this is good so far, really good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I have no idea who the killer is.
Oh, great. Me neither.
When Star Wars Episode 9 said that Rey was descended from Palpatine, everybody over the age of 11 could tell right away that they decided that after the fact. Why? There was nothing even remotely hinting at this in the previous two movies. So many mystery boxes start with a question without planning in advance what the answer will be. This does not work. The answers matter. Introducing a mystery without considering its solution is a recipe for disappointment. In the average story, it can be okay to have an unexplained MacGuffin that propels the story forward. Think the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. But in Pulp Fiction, the story isn't about the briefcase. It's about the people around it. The contents of the case are immaterial. It's not what makes the story compelling. A mystery box story, however, is built on a foundation of mysteries. They are one of, if not the main reason why people are invested. If a mystery box story asks a question without planning an answer, then the mystery box is empty. It might hook the audience with short-term curiosity, but later on, audiences will demand to look inside. And that's when disappointment will come crashing down, when the story is forced to make up an unsatisfying answer or never give one at all. The cardinal sin of a mystery box story is letting everybody know that it's just been making things up as it goes along. Alright, so far, all of these guidelines have been about how to make a good mystery box story. But there's another elephant in the room here that I have to bring up. And it's that not many people like this sort of thing. I mean, I love it, and so do some other people, but this stuff is pretty niche actually. Most people aren't looking to treat their stories like puzzles to be dissected and solved. And most people, even those who like mystery boxes, also want a compelling story. That is the second half of the term mystery box story after all. A good mystery box story can and should do both, combining puzzle and narrative. That's why number 10 is don't forget about the characters. Mystery is fun and all, but it can't be the only thing keeping people invested. There's a lot of space to fill in between big reveals, and forgetting to surround the mystery with interesting people would be a critical misstep. Curiosity is one way to keep people hooked, but another much stronger way is empathy. When a story gets too wrapped up in the mystery, the people in the story become info dumpers, plot devices, or symbols, instead of being characters. Mystery boxes are at their best when they tie the mysteries and reveals to the emotional stakes. A mystery box story can get everything else wrong, but if it has good three-dimensional characters that people can relate to, that can be enough. So, what is a mystery box story? Let's recap. A mystery box story is a story that opens with a central compelling mystery. It explores that mystery, in the process raising several other interconnected questions. It invites the audience to wonder and try to come up with answers to the questions it raises, and slowly reveals more information over time. A good mystery box story should pace its reveals, and be clear whether its answers are literal or metaphorical. When it ends, it should wrap up most things, but not all. In that ending, there should be reveals to the central questions that were set up in advance, otherwise they won't be satisfying. And arguably the most important thing, it should have good characters, so that the audience has people in the story to care about. In his talk, J.J. Abrams asked, "What are stories but mystery boxes?" I'd answer, so much more. And I think he does know that. Even his stories are never pure mystery. People watched Lost because of the burning questions it presented, but they also watched because of the colorful cast of characters with depth and charm. All of the world's best stories allow us to empathize with people outside ourselves. A mystery box story lets people use the logical part of their brain to keep track of information and solve puzzles. A good mystery box story also makes people use the emotional part of their brain to feel things. It's not easy to get all of this stuff right, but that's what makes this mode of storytelling so exciting. When one does get it all right, it's incredible.
We'll meet again. Don't know